Welcome to ABC News Live. I'm Diane Macedo. We are keeping an eye on Hurricane Florence this morning. You can see it's already whipping up the surf in some areas. It's now downgraded to a Category 2, but looking at the storm from space, you can see it is still huge. We are going to have it covered from several different angles, but first, here are your headlines.
The Philippines bracing for a hit by the biggest typhoon this year. Thousands of people are being evacuated. It's expected to hit on Saturday. CBS now says 60 Minutes producer Jeff Fager has been fired after a text message. The CBS reporter reached out to Fager for a comment about allegations of sexual misconduct. He responded by saying, quote, "Be careful. There are people who lost their jobs trying to harm me."
Newly released video showing disgraced movie producer Harvey Weinstein meeting and caressing a businesswoman hours before she claims he raped her.
That's nice. Let's do that.
His lawyers say it's a further attempt to publicly disgrace him.
It's primary day in New York.
Voters heading to the polls will be focused on this year's governor's race, which has become more interesting than one might have thought a few months ago. Cynthia Nixon has drawn a lot of attention for her more progressive stance and forced incumbent Governor Andrew Cuomo to take her challenge seriously.
The Senate has passed a $147 billion spending package, the first of three needed to keep the federal government running past October 1st.
Two Russian men accused in the poisoning of an ex-spy in Great Britain have gone on Russian state TV. They say they visited the town of Salisbury as tourists and never poisoned anyone. U.S. and Cuban officials will meet today in Washington to talk about the attacks on U.S. diplomats in Havana.
The Seattle Storm have won their third WNBA title, beating the Washington Mystics 98-82.
And we want to get right to Hurricane Florence. The storm is closing in on the East Coast right now. North Carolina is already starting to feel those effects. And now we're getting a new warning about catastrophic flooding. Our own Ginger Z is there in Wilmington, North Carolina. Ginger, what's it like there now, and what's the latest on this storm?
Well, you're starting to see the breeze, and we call it breezy at this point, but I'll tell you, in just a couple of hours, we are not going to be wanting to stand right here. We're going to want to be in cover, and especially overnight, through tomorrow, and even Saturday morning. And that's really the story with this storm, how long it hangs out. But let me bring you through what's happening at this moment. We have video here from Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. The Outer Banks have been really starting to get battered with the outer bands for the last couple of hours. We've seen gusts upwards of almost 60 miles per hour. Some of the streets filling with water in Cape Hatteras, and this is because the storm is closing in. I mean, it is 145 miles to our east-southeast here in Wilmington, and it is headed this way. So west and northwest toward us. It's just moving slower and slower right now at 10 miles per hour. And what we're going to end up seeing with this storm is that slow go, that hug of the coast, and a consistent band of rain. It's almost like I see people out here on the street, and I just want, you guys know it's going to rain in about an hour, right? All right, cool. All right, love you. It's like that's what I want to do in the street. Like, we have very limited time here, and that's kind of the feeling, is that it all will go downhill very quickly. We're going to be in shelter. We're going to get to a place because gusts overnight here could easily get to around 90 or more miles per hour. But wind isn't the story, Diane. It's going to end up being the amount of water and the amount of time water is pushed toward this coastline. So some of the storm surge numbers are in the 9 to 13 foot range. Can you imagine 9 to 13 feet standing above you? That's what you're going to see. Walls of water washing through and not going anywhere, then plugging up some of the tributaries, the rivers and the creeks, trying to get the water out from the inland flooding. I was talking to an expert last night, and he was saying, you know, not is this just a 1-2 punch, it's like a double punch at once. And that's something they haven't necessarily seen here in this part of North Carolina. And it's not just here, it's coastal South Carolina and then moves inland, which my colleague Melissa Griffin is going to talk about in the forecast in just a couple of minutes.
And Ginger, so important to hammer home that point, because, you know, the storm has now been downgraded. At first we thought it might hit Category 5. Now it's down to a Category 2. Some people hear that and they think, meh, we're going to be fine.
Yeah, we actually really dislike the word downgraded. I don't know if you've seen some of the comparisons, but Ike in Galveston and around southeast Texas just ruined them in 15 to 20 foot storm surge. That was a Category 2. Category 2 only takes into effect the Saffir-Simpson scale. It's only about wind. It has nothing to do with how much storm surge. It has nothing to do with 30 to 40 inches of rain, which is predicted for this storm. And that's the kind of downfall of a one type of, scale that people just don't get. So we've had a lot of big hurricanes in the last year. People are definitely sensitive to them, but they're also kind of wanting to be impressed with numbers. Numbers, as far as wind speeds, aren't going to be the number one killer. Water is.
All right, good tips there from Ginger. Ginger, thanks so much, and make sure you get safe before that storm comes in. Thank you. Our own Ginger Z, our chief meteorologist here at ABC. And you heard Ginger talking about the Outer Banks of North Carolina, where the storm is already starting to hit. The area is no stranger to powerful storms, but Florence could actually be historic there. Mandatory evacuations are under effect, and our own Gio Benitez is one of the few people left there. Gio, describe what you're seeing right now.
Well, right now, Diane, we are getting sustained winds of about 25 miles per hour. We're seeing those wind gusts of about 32 miles per hour. And you can just see behind me, these seas look mean right now. We've been watching as these waves get bigger and bigger. And I want to show you here, as this water crashes against this here, you could see what it's already done to that fencing there. That fencing has already been destroyed just this morning because of these waves, these powerful, powerful waters here. We're expecting this to get worse, obviously, over the next few hours. As these outer bands come through, we're starting to get some of the rain too. I just looked at the radar, and now we have some rain that's about to cross here. So it could get potentially very dangerous here. That storm surge that Ginger was talking about, that is what people are worried about. And officials here, they've been saying get out. They want all the residents to get out. They're not going to be able to come back anymore. They're closing off these bridges coming into the Outer Banks. But people here, certainly they're not trapped. They can leave whenever they want. But so many people, Diane, they have left. They have evacuated because they just don't want to be here for whatever this thing does.
Well, glad to hear that at least, Gio. What are authorities telling people that are still there?
They're saying, listen, you know what? We're not going to be able to get emergency crews to you if you need help. So, in fact, I met a guy earlier today who said that he came in from Chesapeake because his mom is a 91-year-old and she doesn't want to evacuate. She's never evacuated in her 30 years here. That's the story that we're going to hear along the coast, that we're going to hear about the elderly who are not able to leave, who don't want to leave. And so a lot of their children are coming in to help them. So he came in, he left his family in Chesapeake, but he came in because he wants to make sure that she has any help, knowing that emergency services just won't be available.
All right, our own Gio Benitez there in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Gio, thank you and stay safe. And Florence comes less than 2 years after Hurricane Matthew, which also pummeled North Carolina, but in some areas it caused massive flooding, and in some cases the hardest hit areas were actually inland. So we have our own Amy Robach there in North Carolina taking a look at how people are preparing for this storm away from the coast. Amy?
Well, Diane, we have been highlighting the mandatory evacuations up and down the Carolina coast this morning here from Wilmington, North Carolina. But it's important to note that there are millions more in the wake of Hurricane Florence who live inland. Yesterday, my team and I drove about 80 miles from where we are now to the town of Lumberton, North Carolina. It was a town that was devastated and decimated by Hurricane Matthew just 2 years ago. Neighborhoods completely destroyed, and many of them have not recovered. So many families not in their homes again from 2 years ago. They're in FEMA housing, and we spoke to one of those men. His name is Jerry Pone Sr. He lost his entire home to Matthew.
Right along.
The water was up to your chest?
Yes. The water was up to my chest along this area here. And I could not believe that.
People don't understand. They don't know the emotional toll it takes to literally lose everything. Now today, emergency officials in Lumberton, North Carolina are scrambling to secure the water plant in that town. That's because during Hurricane Matthew, floodwater overtook the plant as well as the backup generator, causing it to be inoperable for weeks, costing millions to reopen. 18 inches of rain fell in Matthew for the town of Lumberton. 2 feet is expected this time around, and that's why it's so understandable that residents there are concerned. But everyone I spoke with yesterday told me that they are putting their faith in God. They're also asking the country to pray for them. Diane?
I'm sure the country's prayers are with them right now. Amy Robach there in North Carolina for us out of Wilmington. We're also taking a look, not just the flooding, but the power outages expected along the coast could also be a major threat. In some cases, they're expected to potentially last for weeks. As you can imagine, that means there's a big effort to evacuate sensitive areas like hospitals. And our own Tom Yamas is in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, because again, this isn't just North Carolina that's targeted by this storm. And Tom, what's it like in your area right now, and how are these evacuation orders being implemented?
Well, Diane, it's not too bad here, as you can see. I mean, the surf is picking up a little bit. We're at high tide right now in Myrtle Beach, but the waves are still really small. It's pretty peaceful here, to be really honest with you. Usually this place attracts about 18 million visitors a year. The beaches are pretty deserted. These are people who live here who have not evacuated. Speaking of evacuations, 60% of the people in this area, this is an evacuation zone, have gotten out, but the other 40% are sticking around, and that's what concerns officials because they asked everyone to get out. But a lot of people I've spoken to here, they think they can ride this one out. They're watching Florence, they're seeing it change, they're watching the downgrades, and even though they should be getting out, as the storm downgraded, it gave them more evidence, if you will, more reason to stick around. This is what they're telling me. And somebody who's sticking around here is Lucy Hansen. She's been here for about 6 years. Hey, Lucy, can you come over here? We met Lucy out here on the beach in Myrtle Beach. She's got, what exactly is that? It's a scooper, right?
Well, actually, my brother made it. It's an old golf club handle, and then we bought scoop at the dollar store.
Okay.
He welded it on for me, put some screws in there.
And you're scooping up shark teeth, right?
Yes.
And whoa, watch out, here comes the tide. And so you've got a couple shark teeth right there.
I got a
Steve,
few.
come here. See if you can get these beauties right here. So you're picking up shark teeth. There's a massive hurricane just off the coast. It's wider than North Carolina and South Carolina put together. So why are you all smiles out here on the beach?
Because I just love being out here.
You're not worried about the storm?
Not yet.
Why?
Because I've been watching the Weather Channel and all the local stations, and it looks like we're really just going to get rain.
Okay.
It's going to be windy, yes, but I don't know, I'm just not scared. And I'm in a really safe building.
All right, so you're high up. You're in one of these sort of high rises on the beach over here?
High rises. I'm on the 4th floor.
But you went through Hurricane Matthew, and you told me that you were scared, and that was only a Category 1.
Right.
Watch out, here it comes the high tide.
It got us.
It got us. It's okay, though.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not alone. There's about 20 of us staying in the building. So.
But you were scared during Matthew? You said your door got slammed in?
It keeps getting sucked out because...
sucked out?
Yeah, but I tied it down now.
Okay. And why didn't you evacuate? Is it just too hard for you to evacuate? Is that one of the reasons?
No, I just wanted to stay.
Okay, so you're not scared at all?
No, I'm from up north, so I'm used to all the nor'easters up there.
All right. Well, county officials say people like you should have gotten out. You live in an evacuation zone. It's a serious storm.
I know that.
You're going to be without power. You know that. You still have time to get out.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Lucy,
I'm
you're
not
sticking
going,
around.
though.
All right, thank you for talking to us, and good luck finding those shark teeth.
You're welcome.
If you find any watches, let me know.
Yeah, okay. Diamonds.
There you go. All right, Lucy, thanks. So, Diane, that's the sense of some of the people that are staying here. They're not too worried about the storm. Most people have gotten out. People should be worried. This thing is a monster. It could be a 3-day event with all the rain and flooding, and that's really what a lot of people here on the beach are worried about. I don't know if you guys can see. You can't see it from this perspective, but there's a giant Ferris wheel all the way in the distance. It's called the Sky Wheel out here in Myrtle Beach. I think we have some video of it. It's been around for 10 years. They took off all the 42 gondolas. It's right on the ocean. It's supposed to withstand hurricane force winds, but the officials are worried about that record storm surge and what that power, that force coming right from the ocean could do to something like that. There's so many other amusement parks up and down the boardwalk. I spoke to another guy who had to secure one of the amusement parks. He tells me he thinks they're going to be okay, but we'll know in less than 24 hours, Diane.
Yeah, and we got to see during Sandy how vulnerable those amusement parks can be. Tom, I know Lucy, who you were talking to there, is a local, and it seems like most of the people in the background you said are locals. One of the problems with Myrtle Beach is it's a huge vacation spot. In many cases, you're talking about people who aren't familiar with this kind of weather, but also aren't familiar with the area. Do they seem to be heeding the evacuation warnings?
Yeah, luckily enough, we're a little later in the summer season, as you know, Diane. So thankfully, a lot of the tourists aren't here. You look down the beach now, Diane, you can see this. Look, it's somewhat of a ghost town. I mean, it's completely empty with just a few people, a handful of people walking the entire stretch. And this Grand Strand, it's about 60 miles. So there's a lot of beach here, and you can see it's empty. So people have gotten out. There are people staying in our hotel. You can see people up here if we pan around here in this balcony. This is where we're staying. It's mostly media. Some people that work in the hotel are staying here. I haven't seen a lot of tourists. There's not a lot of places to eat. There's really no places to drink. There's no places to buy those lovely souvenirs like the crazy T-shirts. All of that has been shut down. You literally have 1 or 2 restaurants that are open, and they're serving, donuts and a minimal amount of Chinese food. That's essentially all you can eat. So it's not a fun place to be. It's also a dangerous place to be right now. So thankfully, I think a lot of the tourists have gone.
All right. Well, a little speck of good news there. Tom Yamas in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Thanks, Tom. Stay safe. And now let's get the latest on the storm's track and that forecast. Let's go over to Melissa Griffin, who's in our weather center. Melissa, what are we expecting from this storm? And I know one of the big issues is the size here.
That's right, Diane. So that's what we're so concerned about, because this storm is massive. Now, everyone's saying, oh, well, it's only a Category 2, but there are some other factors besides that. Category 2 is just based on the wind speeds, and that's not really our main concern with this storm. It's all of the water it's going to bring. And like you said, Diane, it is a huge storm. It's about 500 miles wide, and those hurricane-force winds extend 80 miles out from the center. So that's about 160 miles that those extend out from the center. But I want to get right to the maps. The most urgent part of what's happening right now is that we have some of those bands already hitting parts of North Carolina and the Outer Banks. Those are tropical storm force winds, very heavy rain, and that tornado watch in effect through this evening, because some of these bands could also bring tornadoes as well. So Category 2 winds are 105 miles per hour. It's moving northwest at 10 miles per hour. It's slowing down. This is the other problem. The two main concerns I have with the storm is the size of it. It's going to bring extremely dangerous conditions well away from the center of the storm, and how slow it's going to move. So take a look at this. You see somewhere but Friday morning we could see a landfall, possibly as a Category 2 or a high-end Category 1, and then it just sits there. I mean, we're going to see hurricane conditions begin tonight, continue into Friday morning, continue through the day on Friday. So let me show you the timing here. This is very important. We have the wind speeds on here as well. This is tonight already. Those hurricane force winds lashing parts of North Carolina, Morehead City, 77 mile per hour winds, heavy rain moving into Wilmington, and then we bring it to Friday morning. We're going in now 12 hours later, and we still have those hurricane force winds. We have the water piling up at the coast, the storm surge, and the very, very heavy rain. Flooding is going to be the issue, and it really doesn't move. This is Saturday at 2 a.m. We're still talking about heavy rain hitting the Carolinas, moving down into parts of South Carolina, and those wind speeds are going to continue. But again, the wind isn't our biggest concern. Of course, it's going to be damaging winds. It's going to be power outages, but it's the rain. It's the storm surge that could be catastrophic. It is the rain and the flooding. Some spots could see locally up to 40 inches. And, because this storm is going to sit there for so long, that is our biggest concern, is all the water it's going to bring with it between the storm surge and between the flooding rain. So again, people say, oh, it's a Category 2, but that's really doesn't take into account how dangerous and large this storm really is.
And as Ginger pointed out, we have seen Category 2s in the past that did some serious damage. So good advice there. Melissa Griffin from our New York Weather Center. Melissa, thank you. And now we want to go over to the American Red Cross. Jonathan McNamara, the communications director there, is on the phone with us now. And Jonathan, I was hoping you could talk through what residents need to know at this point.
Yeah, so the most important thing the residents can do right now is continue to listen to local warnings that are coming from their emergency officials. As your meteorologist mentioned, there's still some uncertainty with the track and how exactly this is going to be in many areas. So by listening to those officials, when they tell you need to evacuate, heed those evacuation warnings. There are evacuation shelters up and down the coast across the many areas that could be impacted by this storm. We already saw that 1,600 people last night spent the night in a shelter. We have over 1,500 disaster workers engaged in this, because we want to make sure that people have a safe place to go, that they have a warm bed to sleep in, and access to food and the types of materials that will allow them to withstand what could be a very devastating couple of days.
And Jonathan, we heard our Tom Yamas there talking about some people in Myrtle Beach, where he's located right now, that perhaps are too elderly or disabled for whatever reason and can't evacuate. If you fall into that category, what kind of precautions should you be taking?
Obviously, at that point, it's getting to the highest point that you possibly can to put yourself in a safe location. It's putting as many walls between you and the outside as possible, but also working with your local officials in your specific community to see what access to emergency shelters are there. Now, we have evacuation shelters in communities up and down North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia. that will have the types of resources to allow those people to evacuate. Now, there are community organizations and emergency officials who are working to evacuate people with special needs. So I check with your locality. You can also visit the Red Cross Emergency app, which is a free app on your phone that's going to have the full list of available shelters in your community, because we want anybody who feels that it is time for them to leave to be able to go to one of those evacuation centers and pass the storm there. That's the best and safest location for you to go, and those are being run not only through the American Red Cross, but with our partners at the local, state, and federal level.
And Jonathan, really quick, just give us a peek behind the scenes of what goes on within your organization at a time like this.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, this is a massive mobilization for the entire Red Cross. We have over 1,500 disaster workers engaged from across the country. We also have tractor trailers, over 120 of them, with equipment and relief supplies, the food, the water, the materials that would stand up shelters, and then our mobile support vehicles that are staged in areas and will start to move in after the storm passes and do the things you see year after year after these storms. So it's going through neighborhoods, providing those cleanup supplies, the types of things that allow families to start the recovery process. And this is led by over 90% of our workforce are volunteers. And I think this is a really important point. When people say the Red Cross is responding, what does that mean? These are retirees, these are college students, these people with a passion for serve who will leave their homes for 2 to 3 weeks at a time, sometimes more. And they're volunteering to help neighbors that they've never met. I left Virginia to go to Houston last year in Texas, and now I'm seeing some of the same faces I saw in Texas here in Virginia, and we'll be going down to North Carolina. So these are amazing people who just serve and want to help. So I would encourage anybody who sees this story. We were able to do this response based on the generosity of the American people in the past, who gave us those donations that allowed us to hit the ground before anything occurred. So if you'd like to support our efforts, you can call 1-800-RED-CROSS. You can visit redcross.org, or you can text Florence to 90999 to make a $10 donation. You can also join us as a volunteer by visiting redcross.org/volunteer. We'll get you signed up, we'll get you trained, we'll get you into the response.
All right, that's Jonathan McNamara from the Red Cross. Jonathan, thank you so much for being with us this morning, and also for the great work that you, your organization, and all those volunteers do. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And of course, local residents and the Red Cross are not the only ones preparing for this. The government has plenty of preparations underway as well. Our own Mary Alice Parks is at the FEMA Operations Center. Mary Alice, what's it like there right now?
Yeah, we're at the nerve center for the federal government's response. As you said, the people here in this room remind us that all initial response begins at the local level. But once local governments and cities ask for help, well, the people in this room want to make sure that help is there. In particular, I'm joined by the FEMA Administrator, Brock Long. Describe for me what is going on behind us. I've seen people from basically every federal agency I can think of.
Right, so this is the National Response Coordination Center, and my role as FEMA Administrator is to bring together and coordinate the entire firepower of the federal government to make sure that we can go down and meet a governor's response and recovery needs. And ultimately, our assistance will get all the way down to the incident level at that local level. And what you see behind us is how we organize planning, logistics, mass care. So, for example, the row behind us is right now they're totally focused on supporting the shelter mission. Once the storm passes, they'll flip over and start focusing more on how do we help people recover.
Over around that back corner, I saw men and women working on maps, kind of geospatial maps, and they told me that those maps help them figure out where to pre-position resources. How have you guys tried to pre-position resources, and is that still being decided and worked out?
So all the pre-positioning is really done because what we have to do right now, the storm is starting to encroach. The waters are rising, the rain's starting to fall. So what we have to do is everything that we pre-position, particularly our people, we got to take care of them. But we constantly assess on where we think the greatest threats are going to be. We use social media trending. We use real-time data that comes in to be able to mobilize very quickly. And what we're going to mobilize first is the search and rescue efforts, particularly to the areas that have been hardest hit by the storm surge once we can get in. So that's what we're doing.
How does this hurricane differ from other hurricanes, and how will your response differ from last year?
Well, I'll tell you what makes it similar. The Carolina coast, this is a typical, Carolina, a typical damaging hurricane, because what they're doing is, while it's downgrading, the wind speed's downgrading, it's still a very dangerous storm because the winds are expanding as it falls apart. The problem with the winds coming down, it's good that the winds are coming down, but the storm surge forecast is still the same. So what you're going to see is the ocean is starting to rise now, not only along the coast, but in the back bay and inlet areas. And those wind bands that are coming in are pumping and holding water back in those back bay and inland areas, so that when the brunt of the storm pushes through, you're going to see a lot of coastal flooding. And I would say that this storm is very similar to kind of a combination between Hugo in 1989 and Floyd in 1999.
I got to ask you, the president creating a political storm himself, he said that the response to Maria was an unsung success. And this morning, tweeting and denying and arguing with reports about the death toll there. Do you think the response to Maria was an unsung success?
Look, I believe that these people worked around the clock, put 100% into Puerto Rico, and we kept Puerto Rico from complete and total collapse. No doubt about it. What we have to do now is, how do we rebuild Puerto Rico? The conversation needs to be around, how do you rebuild the Commonwealth in a more economically and resilient fashion? And not only that, but what we have to do is build an arm of emergency managers at the local and Commonwealth level that did not exist before the storm. So, yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, Administrator Brock, I really appreciate you joining us. This Response Coordination Center will be up and running, I imagine, through the weekend. I've been noting these red jackets that all of them are wearing. They have their title and agency on the back, so people even know who they're talking to. Diane?
All right. Mary Alice Parks from the FEMA Operations Center. Thanks for the inside look, Mary Alice. And you heard Mary Alice referring to President Trump. The president has been very active on Twitter this morning. He is warning about Hurricane Florence, also assuring the American public that the federal government is ready. Also, though, he is arguing against that death toll from Hurricane Maria, which we heard Mary Alice refer to. Karen Travers is at the White House with a look at all of this. And Karen, let's start with what the president's saying about Florence.
Yeah, the president is said to be monitoring the storm forecast very closely. He's talking to lawmakers, governors in all of the states that are going to potentially be impacted by Hurricane Florence. And he's also still issuing those warnings that Americans in the storm zone need to listen to state and local officials, still heed those evacuation orders. If they haven't left already, get out. The president wrote this morning on Twitter, "We are completely ready for Hurricane Florence as the storm gets even larger and more powerful. Be careful." Diane, there are no public events on President Trump's schedule today. So as of right now, we are not going to see him. There's no briefing from the press secretary, Sarah Sanders. I wouldn't be surprised if they add something later. We have seen the president all week commenting on Florence, but so far right now, those messages are just coming out on tweets.
All right, and now to Maria. We got that revised death toll not that long ago from the government of Puerto Rico saying roughly 3,000 people died in that storm. The president is now calling that into question. Is there a reason to doubt that number?
Yeah, this is a pretty incredible series of tweets from the president this morning. And all week now, he has been pushing back against criticism of how the federal government responded in the immediate aftermath to Hurricane Maria and how they handled problems on the island over the months after that. The president this morning writes that 3,000 people did not die in the two hurricanes that hit Puerto Rico. He added in another post that the increased death toll was done by Democrats in order to make him look as bad as possible. A couple weeks ago, a team of independent researchers, Diane, based out of George Washington University, upped that death toll to nearly 3,000 from 64. Officials in Puerto Rico, the government there, takes that and now uses that as their official death toll. The president is saying that this wasn't in the storm and that this was all in the aftermath of it, and that the federal government did a great job given the difficult logistics and the challenges that they were facing. The president also wrote on Twitter, quote, "If a person died for any reason like old age, just add them onto the list. Bad politics." But of course, these researchers, Diane, say that because of the federal government's response, there were issues with electricity, there were issues getting supplies, water, things that people really needed, and that resulted in this massive death toll.
All right, Karen Travers from the White House with a look at what President Trump is now saying about Florence and Hurricane Maria. Karen, thank you. And that does it for us here at ABC News Live. If you are in the storm zone, please be careful. And remember that you can check our updates all day long at abcnews.com or at the ABC News app. For ABC News Live, I'm Diane Macedo. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great day and stay safe.